For generations, the Roman Empire had grown through a nearly unstoppable pattern of conquest. From the sun-baked lands of the Mediterranean to the rugged mountains of Europe, Roman legions marched with a confidence earned through centuries of victory. Kingdom after kingdom had fallen before them. Cities that once seemed unconquerable eventually opened their gates or were taken by force. Roman leaders came to believe that their military system was not merely superior to that of their enemies but virtually unbeatable. This belief was reinforced every time another province was added to the empire, every time another rival was defeated, and every time Roman standards were raised over newly conquered territory. Success had become so common that many Roman officials viewed future victories as inevitable rather than uncertain. By the beginning of the 1st century AD, Rome's attention increasingly turned toward the lands beyond the Rhine River. To Roman eyes, Germania represented both an opportunity and a challenge. It was a vast region inhabited by numerous tribes, many of whom lacked the centralized governments that Rome typically confronted. Roman administrators believed that these divisions would make the Germanic peoples easier to control. If one tribe resisted, another could be persuaded to cooperate. If conflict emerged, Rome's disciplined legions could quickly suppress it. The empire had successfully applied similar strategies elsewhere, and there seemed little reason to expect Germania would be different. The Roman understanding of Germania was shaped by reports from traders, military scouts, and local allies. These sources often emphasize the fragmented nature of the tribes and the absence of large urban centers. To Roman officials accustomed to dealing with organized kingdoms and established cities, the Germanic world appeared politically underdeveloped. Many believed that once Roman authority was firmly established, resistance would gradually fade. Roads would be built, taxes collected, and Roman law imposed. In their minds, Germania was not an unconquerable wilderness but a future province waiting to be integrated into the empire. This confidence influenced the actions of Roman commanders operating near the frontier. Forts were established in strategic locations, and Roman troops moved increasingly deeper into Germanic territory. Administrative structures began to appear, signaling Rome's intention to govern rather than merely raid or patrol the region. Officials acted as though Roman rule was already secure. The presence of legions was viewed less as protection against a dangerous enemy and more as a tool for maintaining order among populations that were expected to submit. Such assumptions created an atmosphere in which caution gradually gave way to complacency. Among the men entrusted with advancing Roman interests was Publius Quinctilius Varus, an experienced administrator who had previously governed other provinces of the empire. Varus possessed political connections and administrative experience, but Germania presented challenges unlike those he had faced elsewhere. Despite this, he approached his responsibilities with the confidence of a representative of the world's most powerful empire. Like many Roman officials of his time, he believed that the superiority of Roman institutions and military power would ultimately overcome any local resistance. This mindset influenced both his decisions and his perception of the threats surrounding him. The Roman military itself contributed to this sense of security. Roman legions were renowned for their discipline, training, and battlefield effectiveness. Soldiers could construct fortifications with remarkable speed, maintain formation under pressure, and execute complex maneuvers with precision. Their reputation was known throughout the ancient world. Opponents often feared Roman armies before battle even began. Many Roman officers believed that no tribal coalition could withstand the organized force of trained legionaries. The victories of previous generations seemed to prove this belief repeatedly, making it difficult for many Romans to imagine a scenario in which Germanic warriors could seriously threaten their armies. As Roman influence expanded across Germania, relationships developed between Roman authorities and certain tribal leaders. Some local elites cooperated with Rome for political or economic reasons, while others served alongside Roman forces. These arrangements further strengthened Roman confidence. The empire interpreted such cooperation as evidence that the region was gradually accepting Roman rule. Friendly interactions with selected leaders created the impression that resistance was limited and manageable. Roman commanders increasingly viewed the situation as one of administration rather than conquest, believing that the most difficult phase of expansion had already passed. Yet beneath the surface, resentment was growing among many Germanic communities. Roman taxation, legal interference, and military occupation generated anger that was not always visible to Roman officials. Cultural differences deepened mistrust between the occupiers and the tribes. While Rome saw itself as bringing order and civilization, many Germanic peoples viewed Roman expansion as a threat to their independence and traditional way of life. The confidence of Roman administrators often prevented them from recognizing the depth of this hostility. Warnings were overlooked because they did not fit the prevailing belief that Germania was already largely under control. This overconfidence became especially dangerous when it affected the way Roman leaders evaluated information. Reports that suggested unrest could be dismissed as minor disturbances. Tribal disputes were often interpreted as evidence of continued division rather than signs of coordinated resistance. The assumption that Rome's enemies lacked the ability to organize effectively led many officials to underestimate emerging threats. Confidence in Roman superiority created blind spots, making it easier for determined opponents to operate without attracting serious suspicion. The more secure Rome felt, the less prepared it became for unexpected danger. By the year 9 AD, these attitudes had become deeply ingrained within the Roman administration operating in Germania. Roman leaders believed they were overseeing a region that was steadily moving toward full incorporation into the empire. The presence of powerful legions, trusted local allies, and established administrative structures reinforced this perception. Few imagined that they were standing on the edge of one of the greatest military disasters in Roman history. The confidence built through decades of triumph had created a dangerous illusion, one that would soon collide with a reality far different from anything Rome expected. Among the many figures who moved between the worlds of Rome and Germania, none would have a greater impact on history than Arminius. Born into the Cherusei tribe, he grew up during a period when Rome was steadily expanding its influence beyond the Rhine. Unlike most Germanic warriors, Arminius became familiar with Roman culture at an early age. As part of Rome's strategy for managing frontier regions, the sons of tribal leaders were often brought into the Roman sphere, where they could be educated, trained, and encouraged to develop loyalty to the empire. Arminius was one of these young men, and his experiences would provide him with knowledge few of his countrymen possessed. During his years under Roman influence, Arminius learned far more than the language and customs of the empire. He received military training and served alongside Roman forces in various campaigns. He observed how Roman commanders organized their armies, how legions maintained discipline, and how officers communicated during battle. He witnessed firsthand the strengths that had allowed Rome to dominate much of the known world. Roman military tactics, marching procedures, logistics, and command structures became familiar to him. While many tribal leaders could only guess how Roman armies operated, Arminius understood them from the inside. His service was impressive enough that Rome rewarded him with privileges rarely granted to foreigners. He obtained Roman citizenship and was even given equestrian status, an honor that placed him among a respected social class within the empire. Roman officials viewed him as a valuable ally who could help maintain stability among the Germanic tribes. To many Romans, Arminius represented the success of their frontier policies. He appeared to be proof that local leaders could be integrated into the Roman system and transformed into loyal supporters of imperial rule. Yet beneath this appearance of loyalty, Arminius was forming his own conclusions about Rome's presence in Germania. He saw how Roman governors treated local populations. He observed the growing demands for taxes and obedience. He understood that Rome's long-term goal was not partnership but control. The more he learned about Roman ambitions, the more he recognized the threat they posed to the independence of the Germanic tribes. Unlike many tribal leaders who only saw fragments of the larger picture, Arminius could see exactly where Roman expansion was leading. As Roman influence spread deeper into Germania, resentment among many tribes intensified. The arrival of Roman administrators, laws, and military forces created tensions throughout the region. Some tribes accepted cooperation with Rome, hoping to gain advantages over rivals. Others viewed the growing occupation with suspicion and hostility. Arminius understood these frustrations because they reflected concerns shared by many Germanic communities. He realized that although the tribes were often divided by rivalries, they shared a common interest in resisting permanent Roman domination. Arminius began using the trust Rome had placed in him to pursue a very different objective. While maintaining his position as a respected ally of the empire, he quietly worked to build relationships among various Germanic tribes. This was no easy task. Tribal rivalries had existed for generations, and many leaders distrusted one another. Convincing them to cooperate required diplomacy, persuasion, and patience. Arminius argued that individual tribes standing alone would eventually be conquered one by one. Only through unity could they hope to challenge the Roman Empire. At the same time, Roman officials remained largely unaware of the danger developing around them. Their confidence in Arminius never wavered. His Roman citizenship, military service, and apparent loyalty reassured commanders that he could be trusted. Governor Publius Quinctilius Varus, who oversaw Roman administration in Germania, came to rely heavily on Arminius for advice and information. This trust granted Arminius access to valuable intelligence about Roman plans, troop movements, and strategic decisions. Every conversation strengthened his ability to anticipate Roman actions. The opportunity Arminius had been preparing for finally emerged in the year 9 AD. Reports began circulating about disturbances among certain tribes. Whether these reports were entirely fabricated or based on real tensions remains debated, but they served the purpose Arminius intended. He informed Varus that a local uprising required immediate attention and urged him to move his forces through unfamiliar territory to restore order. Because Arminius had earned such a strong reputation for reliability, his warnings carried great weight. Varus saw little reason to doubt the advice of a man who had served Rome faithfully for years. As preparations were made, Arminius continued to reinforce Roman confidence. Nothing in his behavior suggested betrayal. He accompanied Roman leaders, discussed military matters, and maintained the appearance of a trusted ally. Meanwhile, Germanic warriors quietly assembled throughout the region. Plans were coordinated among tribes that had rarely acted together in the past. The trap required precise timing and secrecy. If Roman commanders discovered the conspiracy too early, the opportunity might disappear. Arminius understood that success depended on preserving Rome's sense of security until the very last moment. When Varus finally led 3 Roman legions and their accompanying forces into the interior of Germania, he believed he was responding to a manageable regional disturbance. The army marched under the assumption that friendly allies surrounded them and that Arminius remained one of Rome's most dependable supporters. Few Roman officers realized that the man guiding them possessed an intimate understanding of their strengths, weaknesses, habits, and expectations. The empire's confidence in Arminius had become so complete that it blinded its leaders to the possibility that their most trusted ally had carefully orchestrated one of the greatest military deceptions in ancient history. As the Roman army advanced deeper into Germania, the situation began to change in ways that many soldiers did not immediately recognize. Governor Varus was leading a massive force composed of 3 legions, auxiliary troops, cavalry units, servants, traders, and supply wagons. The column stretched for miles across difficult terrain. Unlike a battlefield formation designed for combat, this was a long marching procession intended for movement rather than defense. The Romans believed they were traveling through territory that was largely under control, responding to what they thought was a local disturbance. Their confidence allowed them to move without the level of caution normally expected when entering hostile lands. The landscape of Germania was unlike anything Roman commanders preferred. Dense forests covered vast areas of the region, limiting visibility and restricting movement. Narrow paths wound through thick trees, marshes, and uneven ground. Communication between different sections of the marching column became increasingly difficult. Orders that could normally be transmitted quickly across an open battlefield now traveled slowly through crowded ranks and obstacles. The further the Romans moved into this environment, the more vulnerable they became. Yet many officers remained convinced that no serious threat existed nearby. Weather conditions soon made the situation even worse. Heavy rain swept through the region, turning paths into muddy tracks and slowing the movement of men and equipment. Wagons became trapped in the soft ground. Horses struggled to maintain footing. Soldiers carrying armor, weapons, and supplies found every step more exhausting than the last. Rain soaked clothing and reduced visibility. What should have been a relatively straightforward march gradually transformed into a grueling struggle against nature itself. The Roman army's efficiency depended heavily on organization and coordination, both of which were being steadily eroded by the environment. Then the first attacks came. Without warning, missiles began flying from the trees. Javelins and spears emerged from hidden positions, striking soldiers before disappearing back into the forest. Confusion spread rapidly through the ranks. The attackers could rarely be seen clearly, making it difficult for Roman troops to respond effectively. Warriors appeared suddenly, launched their assaults, and vanished before the legions could organize a counterattack. The disciplined battle formations that had brought Rome victory across the ancient world could not easily be deployed in such conditions. As the attacks continued, Roman commanders attempted to maintain order. Officers shouted commands and tried to regroup scattered units, but the terrain worked against them. Sections of the army became separated from one another. Some soldiers fought small engagements without knowing what was happening elsewhere along the column. The sheer length of the marching force made coordinated action nearly impossible. What had once been a unified army was slowly being fragmented into isolated groups struggling to survive amid chaos and uncertainty. The Germanic warriors understood exactly how to exploit these weaknesses. They avoided large-scale confrontations where Roman discipline might prove decisive. Instead, they relied on surprise, mobility, and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Hidden among the trees, they chose the time and place of each attack. They targeted vulnerable sections of the column, striking supply wagons, isolated detachments, and exhausted soldiers. Every ambush increased Roman casualties while minimizing risks to the attackers. The forest itself became a weapon that magnified the effectiveness of Germanic tactics. For several days, the Romans endured a relentless cycle of attacks and movement. Each attempt to escape the danger seemed to lead only deeper into hostile territory. Soldiers marched through mud and rain while constantly anticipating the next assault. Sleep became scarce. Exhaustion accumulated. Fear spread throughout the ranks as men realized that they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Traditional Roman strengths such as discipline, engineering, and battlefield organization offered only limited protection against an opponent who refused to fight according to familiar rules. The psychological impact of the situation was devastating. Roman soldiers were accustomed to seeing their enemies and engaging them directly. In the Teutoburg Forest, the threat seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Every tree line concealed potential attackers. Every stretch of forest raised new uncertainty. Warriors could emerge without warning, inflict casualties, and disappear before retaliation was possible. The constant tension wore down morale. Even experienced veterans struggled to adapt to a form of warfare that denied them the opportunity to use their training effectively. Eventually, the Romans attempted to break free and reach safer ground. However, by this stage the army had suffered significant losses and its cohesion had deteriorated. The Germans continued to harass the retreating force, driving it toward increasingly unfavorable terrain. Near a narrow passage surrounded by forest and defensive earthworks prepared in advance by the Germanic tribes, the Romans found themselves trapped. The attackers launched coordinated assaults against an army already weakened by days of exhaustion, confusion, and attrition. Resistance became increasingly desperate as Roman units fought for survival. The final collapse was catastrophic. Thousands of Roman soldiers were killed in brutal fighting. Many died where they stood, surrounded by enemies on all sides. Others attempted to flee into the forest, only to be hunted down or lost in the wilderness. Governor Varus, recognizing that defeat was unavoidable, took his own life rather than face capture. By the end of the disaster, 3 entire Roman legions, 17, 18, and 19, had effectively ceased to exist. Their standards were captured, their ranks destroyed, and one of the most powerful military forces in the ancient world had been annihilated in the forests of Germania. When news of the disaster in the Teutoburg Forest finally reached Rome, the reaction was one of shock and disbelief. The Roman Empire had suffered defeats before, but the destruction of 3 entire legions was almost unimaginable. These were not small frontier units or temporary forces raised in haste. They were professional legions of the world's most powerful military machine. For decades, Rome had expanded through victory after victory, and many citizens had come to view conquest as a natural and permanent condition of the empire. The reports arriving from Germania shattered that assumption. What had been expected to become another Roman province had instead become the site of one of Rome's greatest humiliations. The emotional impact on the empire's leadership was immense. Emperor Augustus, who had overseen much of Rome's expansion, reportedly struggled to accept the scale of the catastrophe. Ancient writers describe him as deeply affected by the loss, repeatedly lamenting the destruction of Varus and his legions. Whether every detail of these accounts is accurate or not, they reflect the profound sense of crisis that gripped Rome. The defeat was more than a military setback. It represented a direct challenge to the belief that Roman power could overcome any obstacle through determination and superior organization. In the years immediately following the battle, Rome launched efforts to restore its prestige and secure its frontier. New commanders were sent to the region, including the talented General Germanicus. Roman forces crossed the Rhine and conducted campaigns against various Germanic tribes. These operations achieved important victories and recovered some of the military standards lost during the disaster. The Roman army demonstrated that it still possessed formidable strength and remained capable of defeating tribal coalitions in battle. Yet despite these successes, the empire's long-term strategic outlook had begun to change. Before Teutoburg, many Roman leaders had envisioned a future in which Germania would be fully integrated into the empire. Maps, plans, and military operations reflected ambitions that extended far beyond the Rhine River. Roman administrators expected new provinces, new sources of tax revenue, and new territories under imperial control. The destruction of Varus's army forced officials to reconsider those assumptions. Germania was no longer viewed simply as another region awaiting conquest. It had revealed itself as a difficult, dangerous frontier where expansion could carry enormous risks. One of the most important consequences of the battle was the decision to strengthen rather than significantly extend Rome's northern borders. The Rhine River increasingly became the practical boundary between Roman territory and the independent Germanic world. Fortifications, military camps, and defensive systems were developed to secure this frontier. Instead of focusing primarily on expansion, Rome devoted greater attention to protecting what it already possessed. The empire remained powerful, but its leaders became more cautious about committing large forces deep into hostile territory where supply lines and communication could be compromised. This strategic shift influenced the development of Europe for centuries. Because Rome never fully incorporated much of Germania into its imperial structure, the region evolved differently from territories west of the Rhine. Roman law, urbanization, language, and administration spread extensively through provinces such as Gaul, Hispania, and Britannia. East of the Rhine, however, Germanic societies retained greater independence and continued to develop according to their own traditions and political structures. The cultural divide that emerged between these regions would shape European history long after the Roman Empire itself had declined. The survival of independent Germanic tribes also had significant implications for the future of Rome. Over the centuries, these tribes would continue interacting with the empire through trade, diplomacy, migration, and warfare. Some groups served as allies or mercenaries, while others became adversaries. As Rome faced increasing pressures during the later imperial period, Germanic peoples played an ever more prominent role in events along its borders. The existence of strong tribal societies beyond the Rhine ensured that the frontier remained a dynamic and often unstable zone of contact between different worlds. Historians often view the Battle of Teutoburg Forest as a turning point because it highlighted the limits of Roman power. Rome remained one of the greatest empires in human history after the defeat, but the illusion of limitless expansion had been challenged. The empire could still win battles, conquer territories, and project military force across vast distances. Yet Teutoburg demonstrated that geography, local resistance, and strategic miscalculations could combine to defeat even the most formidable armies. The battle served as a reminder that military superiority alone did not guarantee success in every environment. The memory of the disaster remained alive within Roman culture for generations. The numbers of the destroyed legions, 17, 18, and 19, were never reused, a rare acknowledgement of a military tragedy. Roman writers continued discussing the battle long after it occurred, often portraying it as a lesson in the dangers of arrogance and poor judgment. The story became part of Rome's collective memory, a cautionary tale illustrating how confidence can become vulnerability when leaders underestimate their opponents or fail to understand the challenges before them. Beyond its immediate military consequences, the battle altered the trajectory of European civilization. The decision to halt major expansion beyond the Rhine helped preserve distinct cultural and political regions within Europe. The independent development of Germanic societies influenced everything from migration patterns to the formation of medieval kingdoms. The clash in the forests of Germania was not merely a battle between soldiers. It was an event whose consequences echoed across centuries, shaping borders, cultures, and historical developments that would continue long after the last Roman legionary had marched from the frontier.